Good morning and welcome to this year's Day of Dialogue. While the format of these sessions has changed, the importance of the day remains the same. Let me begin by thanking Dr. Christopher McDonald Dennis for gathering all of us around this year's theme, Creating Change Through Community, Action and Organizing. This theme encourages us to explore many ways that community organizing can empower us to make change here at MCLA and in all of the communities of which we are a part. Community organizing is the process of building collective power, particularly among those who have been marginalized, to make change, always with an eye toward creating a more just community and society for everyone. I also extend my gratitude to the presenters, especially the MCLA students, for helping me to know that your lived experiences at MCLA are not good enough and that we must do more. And I hope my colleagues hear you too. Today's dialogue topics are critically important to all of us at MCLA. I firmly believe that each one of us can do more to increase the effectiveness of our efforts to realize a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive academic environment where we all experience a sense of belonging. I charge each of us to move at a more deliberate and urgent pace toward creating this environment. I hope that you find today's sessions educational and that you are moved to action and organizing, the theme of this year's Day of Dialogue. There is much work for us to do at MCLA, and all of us must lean into this important work if we want to realize an enriched and robust community. Thank you all for being here today, and let's continue our work together.
I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the unceded territory of the Mohawk, Mohican, Wampanoag, Wabanaki Confederacy, and Pecumtuck people, and pay my respect to elders, both past and present. Welcome and good morning. The Day of Dialogue is a campus-wide day of workshops and discussions that focus on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am excited to say that it has now become an important part of the academic calendar as it is our third year to host this. With classes suspended, we hope to bring the community together to engage each other and learn from one another. We have staff, faculty, students, and alum presenting today, and I know that we will learn from all of them. This year is going to be a bit different with the pandemic. Obviously, we are hosting it virtually, so engaging with each other might be a little bit different. What we ask is that if you're able to, please put your cameras on so that you can more easily dialogue with each other about these important topics. The first year we held the Day of Dialogue, the focus was complicating race. Last year, we talked about inclusive teaching and learning at MCLA. This year, we are talking about creating change through community action and organizing. And to talk about that subject just a little bit, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Carrie Nichol of the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, and Social Work.
When the Day of Dialogue Committee met last spring to finalize the theme for this year's event, our community and our country were in the midst of uncertainty and unrest, for good reason. The COVID pandemic had just begun, impacting the most marginalized members of our society in the worst possible ways. Black Lives Matter was reinvigorating the demand for racial justice following the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, among so many others. And the presidential election race was gearing up to be bitter and painful. As we began to think about how our community could come together under these circumstances, we realized that the real work for change was not being done by policymakers and presidents, but by regular people. People committed to getting their hands dirty, their bodies maimed, and their voices heard in the fight for equity and justice. The real work was being done by communities, acting collectively to provide for those who had lost their jobs and were running out of resources, to protect those who were most at risk of illness and death, and to push for an end to the racism and hatred that has defined our society for far too long. We thought about mutual aid societies, grassroots protest movements, and get out the vote drives. We thought, in sum, of community organizing and its capacity to change our communities and our society. For those who are not familiar, community organizing is the practice of building power within communities, particularly marginalized communities, to make change. This is different from other methods of community change, such as those that rely on the leadership and plans of outside experts, in that it centers community members themselves and seeks to empower them to bring about the changes they want to see in their own community. When we talk about power in community organizing, we are talking specifically about collective power, the power that community members have when they come together. We know that power can come from status, wealth, and title, but it can also come from numbers, people organizing themselves to speak with one voice. Community organizing is about relationship building, strengthening communities' capacity to fight for themselves, and making real, concrete, and sustainable change. Every one of the sessions in today's lineup is somehow connected to this work. You have incredible opportunities to learn about organizing movements of the past and present, to deeply consider the issues we need to confront locally, nationally, and globally, and to develop the skills to create change through and in our own community. As you attend sessions today, I encourage you to think about how the learning and dialogue you are engaged in is helping to build and strengthen our community, and about how we can use our collective power to make MCLA, North Adams, and our entire society more just, equitable, and inclusive places to live together.